Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is League on Lock. Another Epi, Eric and Mark here with you guys. We're starting today with a preview. It's one of our first previews of 2021, I guess, and it's because it's a huge, massive finals weekend is already here in the LCS, Mark.
Oh boy, it is on. It is on, and for all the marbles of the lock-in tournament, baby. We're
prize.
Here.
Yeah,
we're here for the semifinals lock-ins. Let's get some of that NA for fun cash.
So the real question, they put the banners for the split champions. Do we get a lock-in? Do you get a banner if you win the lock-in tournament?
No, there's a single school locker room lock on the door into the LCS stage. And just that lock is going to have a painted on sticker for the team.
Or you open that locker and there's the trophies for all the lock-in tournaments. But eventually it's, I forgot the lock combo, guys. We'll never see those again. Sorry.
It's someone's bowling trophy that they've scratched out the name and just wrote LCS lock-in on. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, they take the bowling ball out of his hand and then it's just his hands out like this. It could be anything. You interpret it as you will.
He's Rise. There we go. Boom.
Great cinematic. Can't wait for
new rework. There it is.
Yeah, in 2021. Semifinals, though, in the lock-in, and they are exciting. They're good matches. It's top four. 100 Thieves versus Cloud9. In the preseason, you would have said Cloud9 should be big favorites coming into this, but not the case based on what we saw in the lock-ins. But this is the series, the mid-gap, where you should see Perkz come online, because I love Demonte. He's a stud. He's a great domestic mid laner, but Perkz should dominate that matchup.
It's going to be a big question, right? Because when we have seen from Demonte what we have followed in his career, absolutely not afraid to be aggressive, to trade, to try what he wants to try, his game plan into whatever storied mid laner it is. Is it going to be Bjergsen? Is it Jensen? Power Vivo? It doesn't matter where on the tier list you're ranking these mid laners. Demonte thinks that he's at number one and he's going to take him on at full power. That being said, different story with someone like Perkz stepping into the LCS and how dominant we know he can be in lane and how punishing he can be for someone that wants to try and be aggressive into him. That is going to be an interesting dynamic to watch through in this C9 100 Thieves series. The other thing that is extremely interesting that you wouldn't have expected, obviously, is when you think about these two teams. Obviously you have Cloud9 undergoing the changes to the roster, the differences, trying to build up synergy, rapport with each other. Then you have 100 Thieves on the other side where you're looking at that synergy from the Golden Guardians and how is it going to match with Someday? And you're thinking, okay, well, they can find, they have that built-in synergy, but I'm sure the C9 roster, the potential, it's got to be better. But what we've seen from 100 Thieves so far this tournament, I don't know, man. They're ready to stack up best for best in this series.
And for Cloud9, the three returning members have been playing in 2020 form throughout this tournament. They've looked fantastic. Perkz, we talked about, should be able to step up in this series. And Fudge does not have the advantage on paper, but it's more, can he hold up to Someday? Because he looks, as you would imagine, reinvigorated with, he's like, a team. Look at this, guys, a team around me. We're not losing everywhere. They're actually doing proactive things. It's a fun time. And then seeing Blabber and Closer both maybe hovering around the top side. Matchups across the board are fun in this series.
I think Fudge has absolutely been better in the back half of this lock-in tournament than we saw at the very beginning of the lock-in event with Cloud9. It's going to have to be a lot better heading up into the Someday matchup. We did talk about Perkz and Demonte. Even in that situation, and even if it goes negatively for a team like 100 Thieves, I feel like Demonte is going to have an impact in the later team fights. He's going to have to be something that you're taking care of on the C9 side or be wary of. But when you're talking about top lane matchup, Fudge versus Someday has that capability to make Fudge completely irrelevant later in the game. Is just how strong and how dominant someone like Someday can be in his role.
Whoever picks Ornn first is waving the white flag saying, yeah, all right, you're the better top laner. I'm just going on Ornn duty. Get me out of this laning phase. And then I won't be irrelevant because I'm Ornn. It doesn't matter if you're down 60 CS at that point. I still feel like Cloud9 is going to show up and win this series, but I almost hope 100 Thieves does just to see people overreact in the preseason. Because I'm still calling this preseason.
Yeah, absolutely still dealing with this as preseason. And when you're talking, these type of things, we did talk Perkz Demonte. We've talked Someday Fudge, what, where you're looking at, how those dynamics and those matchups are going to work out. But one of the really interesting things as well is Sven and Vulcan, performing at the highest peak that we've got right now of LCS bot lanes. And then you look on the other side of FBI and Huhi, one of the most exciting lanes that we have down in that bottom side, and what they're able to do, how they're able to
Imagine
progress.
saying that a year and a half ago, by the way. FBI and
Exactly.
Huhi, one of the most exciting bot lanes.
A very different story now. And especially into this one, where I'm looking is the supports. Last weekend, Vulcan made a big difference in the TSM series, making sure to outshine the big $3 million man Sword Art himself down in the TSM bot lane. Now you're not dealing with Sword Art, you're dealing with Huhi. And I think that the difference now, it's on Huhi to outshine, to outperform, to show something different to this scene, what he can bring as a star LCS support. Because you better believe it, my man has developed himself into a star support in the LCS right now. He's not core JJ level. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. That man's got a world championship under his belt. But still, we're working our way through. And that bot lane matchup, specifically the supports, is going to provide an interesting wrinkle in this series.
If at the very least 100 Thieves ain't getting smashed like TSM did in that 2v2 in the last series. Other semifinal, you mentioned him, Core JJ. We got Team Liquid versus Evil Geniuses. You got the revenge, the beginning of the revenge tour, Impact versus his former squad. And thankfully, coming into this matchup, Impact is playing playoff buff fully activated in the preseason.
Hey, you don't need to watch that King Kong versus Godzilla trailer, my man. You just watch Team Liquid versus Evil Geniuses. You're going to get to see that. Let's get the Renekton on Impact. We're going to get a Wukong for Alfari. That's how it's going to work out. The revenge matchup, it's got it all. This one, you know what? It doesn't have quite the firepower, the selling points that we can come up with for C9, 100 Thieves in the other side of the semifinals.
I feel like Team Liquid's a bigger favorite than either of the other two.
I still think early on in the year, what we're seeing, what these two organizations and players are trying to establish for themselves early on in the year, absolutely not sleeping on the Team Liquid Evil Genius matchup. You better believe that you're going to see some fireworks.
And again, it's like the bot lane, Tactical and a Core JJ. You can talk in the same conversation as Sven and Vulcan, so it's up to Deftly and Ignar. Deftly's performed really well so far in the tournament, but the TL bot lane is a different beast.
Right. This is not exactly what we were talking Sven, Vulcan, and on this side, oh man, FBI, Huhi, and how's this going to... It's not exactly the same. And that's not meant to short sell someone like Deftly and Ignar and what they've been able to do early on in the year. We were just talking, really that outside of all the other ADCs, outside of the big names, the Svens that you're talking about, Deftly has so far in this early block-in tournament shown us quite a bit more than was expected from him. And so really looking for his performance to continue, but as well, the X factor is going to have to be the support, my man. You got Core JJ on the other side. Ignar is going to be creating some mayhem all around the map. And he's someone that can do it. And he's got partners on, and he's got the partners on EG to buy in and go in on that mayhem. The problem is a squad like Team Liquid, hey, they're going to be ready for you to try and throw a wrench in their plans.
If the X factor's coming down to supports and Core JJ's on one of the rosters, give me Team Liquid 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe bet.
But they should both be great series. Team Liquid going to be the bigger favorite or biggest favorite of the two semis, but could still be close. Excited to see some best of series. We'll have the finals on the weekend as well. So finally, this 3-week tournament will wrap up, and then eventually we'll actually be starting the spring split.
We're almost there. Almost time to lock in for the real deal LCS.
Yeah, this is still just pick and ban for the actual spring split over in North America. T1 back on the Rift. And we know that the roster shuffle of 2021 has lived up to the hype. They've talked about it. They said, we're going to use all 10 players coming into this split. They haven't disappointed. Again, Kyria, the one man who has not been subbed out, but a 1-3 start. They were tied for last in the LCK coming into this, and we saw more subs. We had talked about it. Cuz comes in, Closer comes in for Faker, and we get Teddy. Teddy and Cuz both making their season debuts against Sandbox.
And looks exactly like last time we saw someone like Teddy on the Rift, cleaning up, getting those kills on something like the Xayah. You like to see that performance out of him in game one. Maybe not overall the cleanest and most.
Well, as a team, game one certainly wasn't clean for T1.
Yeah, so that's where we're going. Not everything, crossing your I's and dotting your T's type of situation for T1. But on the Teddy side, thumbs up, pretty good.
Yeah, and obviously everyone's been hyping up Kumiyoshi. He's been fantastic for the most part. But yeah, you forget that Teddy is Mr. Consistent, and he was that in this series. Game one, it looked like T1 should have ran away with it. They had all the tools, all the advantages to close this out, and they just got a little greedy trying to close out the game, trying to kill Nexus turrets, and eventually Sandbox somehow gets back in this game. They get 2 Barons, and then it ends up being a kind of crazy ending where they stop the backs and ends up being a 5v3, but T1 was snowballing, and then all of a sudden the game ends in a 1k gold difference. There were 7 Dragons and 3 Barons in game 1.
I can promise you, game one, the reason why it didn't end as cleanly or, as forcefully as it should have for T1, that's a Faker difference, my man. Faker's in the game. He's making sure he's in that call saying, guys, you're ending this game. We're ending the game. We're not messing around here.
So you're telling me Faker is actually the closer?
There we go. Confusing. He's the one closing the deal. Closer cannot, except they did. They did close the deal.
Yeah, they kind of stumbled, fell, tripped over the finish line.
It was really Teddy closing the deal. It wasn't Closer in game number one, making sure it was. I thought Cuz looked okay. A little shaky some aspects, but certainly
Talia in game one. Yep.
Providing a different look at the very least overall than what we had been seeing with T1 with Elam in the lineup. You get to game two. And yeah, things are okay for T1 still, but you're not leaving with I just can't give you guys the full-on excitement I want to give you for a T1 2-0 victory.
Yeah, it wasn't a dominant 2-0. We'll say that. You wanted a really confidence instilling 2-0. That wasn't necessarily the case. What you can't take from it is it doesn't matter who Kyria is playing with. This bot lane on T1 is fantastic. The Kalista Nico bot lane in game 2, and they smashed the face in of Leo and Sandbox. They were up 30 CS before 15 minutes and a couple of kills.
And this is where you're gonna have to now enter a conversation about the bot lane with T1 and who, let alone who pairs up best with Kyria, what you're trying to accomplish down there. And then as well, talking, I think the best way to look at it really is you have 2 extremely talented and serviceable ADCs. The champion pools, right? The champion proficiency and things of that nature. You saw it immediately in game 1. Teddy Xayah might be, it probably is the best Xayah that we've got in the LCK, right? And so these type of, champion proficiency and strengths are things you can look at as far as, maybe the meta patches, whatnot. The bot lane is not your worry if you're T1 is all we have to say. Closer, Faker, we said it in game 1, would have preferred, I think, a more dominant a Faker type of attitude.
Closer, the thing is champion pool, right? That's what the people want to talk about, because you see him on Zoe or Irelia. He's solo killing, star mid laners. He's completely dominating the game. Then something that's a little more passive, something like Orianna, some of the other meta picks, Syndra. He doesn't have nearly the same impact on a map that you would expect Faker would have, who's played, I don't know, hundreds of games on each of these different champions.
Right, that is going to obviously play into it, but the big one, the important one that we continue to talk about, Cuz provided something different than Element. I think that's something you can still, debate about which one or what you're trying to accomplish. Kana, once again, unfortunately, not a passing performance in this series, and this really was one of the last, and probably is the last chance, at least, until we're seeing the day of T1 Zeus step into the lineup.
Game 2, Summit almost single-handedly brought that game back for Sandbox, and the only reason it was close at times was because he had an incredible Gnar performance. I think he solo killed Kana at least twice in that game, and Kana was also getting caught out in game 2 and game 1. So yeah, despite the win, I'd say it's still him being outperformed by the opposing top laner.
Yeah, and this is not meant to be, some rewriting of history of, oh man, Kana sucks. Last year's a fluke, blah, blah, blah. He's never going to be anything. No. Get that, way out of your mind. If that's any type of mindset you're thinking about this player right now. Sure, he is absolutely struggling and is an issue point for a T1 organization that is expecting and hoping for better. And especially when you have a prospect that is as highly touted as someone like Zeus, you're going to have these type of conversations. But I don't want this to turn into anything, necessarily extremely negative towards someone like Kana and what he's done or what he is as a player in the LCK scene.
It's the classic tale, you probably heard it, of the sophomore slump. We're here, guys. I expect that even if spring doesn't go the way Kana or T1 wants, I expect this guy to bounce back in summer. You don't think he's going to be pushed and motivated when we assume Zeus does get some starts and he's like, okay, this kid behind me is actually pretty damn good, so I got to step up my game if I want to be getting starts going forward.
We've had Sword playing games for a lot of times in the LCK. My man Kana is nowhere close to that level of play that we've been talking about.
It almost seems like a case of he's overconfident. He had such a good split in 2020 that he's almost got the Shy or the Nuggery effect where it's like, rookie of the split, boys. I'm in here. I'll outplay this. Oh, I'm dead.
I didn't outplay this. Yikes. And that's not acceptable for T1, right? You're talking about, can I try this? Can I try to develop like this on Live Sandbox? Maybe Hanwha Life even? Sure, a different situation. An organization, a situation like T1, that's the downside of being on one of these type of organizations for someone like Kana, especially with Zeus waiting to jump right in.
But if you're waiting for a T1 roster to be locked in as the 5 starters, this series got us nowhere closer to that.
No, absolutely. It's still going to be musical chairs, my man. I think absolutely we can talk about the next game. You're probably seeing Zeus slide into that musical chair in the top side.
He would debut against Keen, by the way, in the top.
Yeah, pretty damn good. And then outside of that, you go down to the bottom side of the map at the very bottom and say, okay, Kyria is locked in at support. And then you play around with those other 3 and you figure out who's going to be playing.
Luckily, Kyria looks pretty damn good with either Gubayoshi or Teddy. So bot lane, no real issue for T1. They moved to 2 and 3. Still plenty of climbing for them to do to get back towards the top of that LCK table. There's plenty of climbing left to do for Suning as well. The World Finalists from 2020 been very underwhelmed with their performance so far in the spring split. But finally, we get to see the team that made it to the World Finals. They matched up against OMG. Yes, we're not going to overreact to one series out of them, but this was about as hard a stomp as we've seen in 2021 so far. Game 1, you had Angel on the Azir. He finished to the tune of 11-0-1 and grabbed a pentakill. Why not?
Hey, my man was just stopping by every single door saying, hey, can you have a second to talk about Shurima, my man? No problem. We got the 11-1 Azir feeling strong. Love what Angel did in this game 1. And for Suning, you said it. Look, week 1, we were talking about, still continue your expectations. This should be a top tier playoff level team in the LPL. They need to be competing at that level. And we got that week 1. Outside of week 1, we have not seen that same Suning really show up and deliver the same level of tenacity in their play. You got it today. You saw it today, the return of that level of play, that intensity that they're able to bring to their rep, and just how skillful they can be. You saw it in this series against OMG.
Yeah, it was, Angel kind of stole the show in that first game. Game 2, it was a classic, tough job to be an observer for the LPL because there's people dying all across the map. It's impossible to even keep up. The game in game 2 was only 22 minutes, and Suning had 23 kills to the 4 of OMG, and they had a 14,000 gold lead. 14,000 gold lead at 22 minutes is disgusting.
You're going to get solo queue stomps that are not even to that nature of what's happening. That is absolutely a surrender FF at 15. If I've ever seen one in professional play. They played it out. Didn't take much longer than those 15 minutes, though, to finish it out.
They probably only played it out because it's, you can't surrender anymore. They probably would have if they were able to. But Suning, they're now same record as T1, sitting at 2 and 3. Still a long way to climb back up to be competing with the big boys. But hey, Top Esports and JDG are hanging out at 2 and 2 as well. So they're not that far off of everyone else.
Yeah, there still is at least that hope that that, okay, well, you've got the very top of the table. You got your EDGs, your WEs, your FPXs, undefeated in teams with 1 loss. Okay. But then, yeah, you still got your IGs. You still got squads hanging around here You better believe that they're going to be playoff teams too. So seeing
That's the terrible
seeing
thing
some
is,
familiar faces around them.
or terrifying thing is, with how the regular season is playing out in the LPL, you might have top esports and IG as like a 6 or 7 seed in the playoffs. Imagine drawing that as the higher seed. You're like, wait, what? I'm punished for finishing higher?
I was going to say, what an absolute nightmare situation to roll into a quarterfinals top esports JDG opponent.
Oh, absolutely terrible. But the LPL.
Only the LPL. Only the LPL.
As always. Don't get too excited. But KT Rolster has won 2 series in a row, Mark. I'm just saying, the Telecom War taking down T1. Now they match up against DRX. They're sitting at 3-2. This series, it was a 2-0 for KT. We got a Nocturne mid. That's fun. It didn't do much, but it was in the game.
I was going to say, it reminds me a lot of the times when you hear Vedius talk about Nocturne mid, because, yeah, there was a Nocturne mid, and he didn't
got a couple kills. Yeah, he pressed his ult. Okay.
Yeah, he pushed R. That's all he did, my man. Pushed R on cooldown. And to be fair, we've seen some Nocturnes not push R on cooldown. Yeah. We're looking at you, MLXG.
20 minutes for that first ulti. Not bad.
Right, exactly. So there certainly is something to be said about the Nocturne mid going in. But yeah, look, no one should be excited already about KT given these results.
They're 3-2, Mark. They're tied with Gen G.
I will say this has definitely proven that for the real deal in spring, KT's going to be in that playoff picture. They're going to be in that conversation around that bubble. And at the very least, that's more exciting than we were expecting for someone like KT Rolster.
Yeah, I mean, hybrid replacing aiming was still a downgrade because aiming was so good, but hybrid is exciting. The big key has been, I think Doran and UCal have both been playing at a higher level than at least I expected. UCal he's approaching 2018 KT levels right now.
I was going to say that to me is the key. That's the exciting part that we're seeing in these games and develop again, is seeing that return of the level of play from someone like UCal. Yes, Doran himself is getting better, and well, it wasn't very good to start the year for someone like Doran, so definitely improving. Is thumbs up is all I can offer there. But absolutely with UCal, hey man, you're getting the double thumbs up from me, my man. The way that those performances remind me of the glory days, which is strange to say about someone as young as UCal.
But how many thumbs up is our boy Blank getting? World champion Blank on KT.
Hey, he's getting 3, my man. He's getting 3 for those championships.
He has actually looked good. He's, for a guy who was at such a high level and then got memed for so many years, he is looking good on KT. Let's leave Agent 612 out of here, guys.
Oh man, I can't be bringing that up. Hey, definitely deserves some props in the way bouncing back and the play that we've seen from him with KT, and myself included, a lot of old fans, right? The boomer fans of the T1 days, the older dominance. Good to see Blank performing at a high level again.
There's a reason he was so elated when KT did take down T1. His former boys. I mean, former boy. It's really only Faker that remains from those eras. But good to see Blank playing back in the LCK and picking up some wins. KT moved to 3-2. Like I said, tied for Gen G. But we're not excited. That's all the time today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging. Catch you on the flippity flip.